Hi everyone, Archmage's Faraston here. In today's video I'm going to show you a guide to starting out in Dwarf Fortress. The game is a lot of fun, but it can be very complicated, especially in the beginning. So I wanted to put this video together to give you all a sort of rough idea how I usually go about starting out my fortress. Alright, let's get into it. The game will go through a timeline. Basically you can see the map and like a history in the top left hand corner being developed, and now it's up to you to basically decide where you want to start building your fortress. You can build it near existing dwarven settlements or near elves or near humans. I try to pick an area that I know there will be some water, there'll be some wood from a forest, and mountains or at least hills in order to get those minerals. You can choose between Fortress and Legends mode. Legends will basically give you all this background. The Adventurer mode isn't ready yet at this point in time, but you can play in Fortress mode, which is what we'll do now. Okay, so I've pretty much decided where I want to go, and now you can zoom in and you can see a lot more detail. I will try to go somewhere where I know I'm going to have all those resources that I need: wood, water, and of course minerals. So it can go here, but you can see in the top right hand corner, yeah, a few things are missing. So I think here at the mouth of this river might be a better place to go. Okay, let's go for it. I think this is as good as any place. Okay, yeah, let's just say that's fine. Alright, so you will start with a wagon and a small group of dwarves, about 8 or 9 of them. And the first thing you want to do is sort of look around and find, okay, there's water there, there's a river. Where are the trees to cut down, and what sort of crops are around? And then straight away, bottom left, you want to click on the pickaxe and dig into the side of the mountain. As soon as possible, you really want to start getting into the mountainside and digging your dungeon or your fortress. Okay, you can see here that this is mainly sand. Sand is useful for glass, but that's pretty much it. So I'm only going to build maybe 1 or 2 rooms at this level, and then pretty soon I want to dig down as quickly as possible to get down into the caverns, down into the rocks, where you can get metals and other things that are more useful. In order to go down a level, you'll have to build stairs. They're right next to the pickaxe icon. And just remember that in order to dig down, you will have to make the stairs crossing over 2 different elevations. So they'll have to go from one level down to the next level. And here I'm just going to build a few more rooms just to store things and get a bit of space in our fortress. An important part of the game is the division of labor. So you will have some dwarves that are good at some things, some that are good at others, and pretty much all of them can be used for hauling goods back and forth. But for miners, you will always have one dwarf who is very good at mining. You should use him to do most of the work, which you can see he's doing here. They'll go through it pretty quick, but at a certain point you may need a second or third dwarf to do that mining. Later on, you'll need to build a better pick. You can do that later on, perhaps made of iron, but we'll cover that a bit later. To start the game, you'll have everything you need So here you can see that I'm creating a stockpile. Here I've said all. The dwarves will automatically unload the wagon and start loading things into that stockpile. Here I'm going to build another stockpile area, but it's just for refuse. That's an important point, because if you mix goods that are decaying with all your other goods, you will get what's called miasma, and basically your good goods will be destroyed by the decay. So you really want to keep those two things separate. Another thing you want to keep separate are dead bodies, but we'll cover that later. Okay, so we've dug down another level, and you can see it's still sand, so I'm going to dig down another level here again, making those stairs, and you can see the stairs really cover two different elevations, and we'll dig this area out and see if we can get down to the rock. Okay, in the meantime, we want to create a pasture, and pastures are where your animals go, and basically they will feed themselves in this pasture. You want to put your ducks, your horses, your yaks, your pigs, your sheep, your cows in the pasture. Your dogs and cats I would not put in the pasture. They will basically roam around your dungeon, around your fortress, and they will feed themselves. They will also be useful, dogs in particular, for hunting. You can also train them as war dogs, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But I would really keep the cats and dogs separate, and the dogs in particular use for either hunting or for war. Alright, so finally we've dug deep enough to get into the caverns, into rock instead of sand. This is a good thing. This is where we'll find useful minerals and useful types of rock, and this is where I will start to construct the main buildings and workshops. So I always like to reach out in 4 directions and see what kind of rock and what kind of mineral, if there's any jewels or gems, but it's up to you how you do it. I'm also going to dig down another level and see what's down there. Another important point is defining a drinking area for water. Your dwarves are basically alcoholics, I kid you not. They will only drink water if there's nothing else to drink, and you will need fresh water for your hospital. So define an area for drinking water, and define here an area for fishing. And from experience, I can tell you the fishermen will get you a lot of food, a lot of fish very quickly, and right at the beginning of the game. So just put his fishing workshop here next to the area you've designated for fishing, and that fishing dwarf will start to work very quickly. Alright, at this point we've dug out a few rooms. Now you want to start creating beds as quickly as possible. Your dwarves will get very annoyed and upset quite quickly if they don't have beds. You can see this in the top sort of left-hand corner. Some of the yellow and orange and red faces. A lot of that is down to not having a bed. Also not having a goblet to drink alcohol from. Also tends to annoy your dwarves quite quickly. So I would really recommend that you build a woodworking workshop and start cranking out those beds. You can also start creating doors and start creating jugs and basically, wooden goblets for the dwarves to drink from. I would also start creating chairs and tables very quickly. After the beds, I would really recommend that you start producing chairs and tables for your dining room. Having a dining room really calms the dwarves down and can take away a lot of the early frustration that they may have. So you can see I'm doing that here. I'm also creating the still. This still is absolutely crucial. You will need to start cranking out basically alcohol for your dwarves to drink very quickly. You can do that using plants or fruit, and I would really recommend that you start doing that quickly early on in the game. You can see at the moment I do have some drink, but that's going to go down quite quickly. Also creating a farmer's workshop that will allow us to produce cheese by milking some of our animals and to produce wool by shearing some of our other animals, such as alpacas, llamas, sheep, obviously, things like that. Alright, at this point I've dug out quite a bit of the area, and here I'm going to create a dining room. And as I said, dining rooms are really important for helping your dwarves to feel happy. You can assign a dining room to one dwarf or just leave it open to everyone. I would leave the first one open to everyone, and here you can see in the middle I've put down some chairs and some tables. That will go a long way towards keeping them happy. Also, you can see next to this room I've got a dormitory. So a dormitory is basically a bedroom that has more than one dwarf. Here I'm putting down as many beds as possible. For the expedition leader, I will create his own bedroom, his own office, and his own dining room, but I will do that in a few minutes. Right now it's important just that we have bedrooms and beds for the main body of your dwarves. And you can see the storage is really filling up quickly. You will need to start creating additional supply rooms quite quickly. I mentioned how important the still is. You can see I've only got 10 drink at the moment. You can make drink basically from fruit or from plants. I can also recommend that you put it on repeat mode. There's a little button that sort of looks like a couple of arrows. If you click on that, that will allow you to keep producing those drinks without having to keep clicking on it every time. It's continuous until you run out of materials. So that's important. Let's get that cranking out, and soon we will start building some of the other rooms. I've already built a metalworking workshop and somewhere to smelt. You can see this in the bottom of the screen, and we will start producing some other important goods in just a minute. So here we're in the smelter. Your smelter will require some type of fuel, so you can use coke, which is probably the most efficient way to do it, or if you're just starting out, you can produce fuel in the building right next to it, where you can basically use wood to produce that fuel, and that fuel is then used in the smelter. But I would recommend you just do that in the beginning, and then as soon as possible start to use coke, which you can make in the smelter itself. So once you've done that, you can start to produce iron bars or platinum. Another one is copper, things like that, and then start using them to produce more useful tools. I really recommend that you start producing some iron bars as quickly as possible to make some weapons, to make some tools, and so on. One building that drove me nuts in the beginning was the farmer's workshop. There are a lot of options here, and I'll just explain what it says in the wiki. So process plants means make thread from the plants. For example, pigtails will be turned into rope. You can produce cotton and so on. So processing plants will not help you to produce food. It will basically make thread. Processing plants in a barrel will basically take an empty barrel and turn sweet pods into dwarven syrup and seeds. And processing plants in a vial will take an empty vial and turn valley herbs into golden salve. So these three options are not going to help you with food or producing drinks. Another thing to watch out for is to make sure that your dwarves are not eating all of the seeds and things that you use to brew drinks. So here in labor and then go down into kitchen, you can go through a list of all the types of edible things you have. And I would recommend that cranberries, for example, you turn off, you make them red in the food column. and you keep them only green in the drinks column. So that'll stop your dwarves from eating those berries, and it'll allow you to use them for brewing. The next topic is trading. So in the top left-hand corner, you once in a while will see this alert. So traders will come to you every once in a while, and this is actually a good thing. It's a way for you to earn money. It's also a very good way for you to get access to animals that you need. Quite often you'll just have a female or just have a male, and you'll need the opposite sex. You will need this broker's depot, which I'm building here. Ideally you have a broker as well as your nobility, but you don't absolutely need one. So you will have to send all the goods that you want to trade to the brokerage house. But first, if you see here, what I'm doing is I'm looking through a list of things that I would like the broker to bring next year. So next year I'm asking him to bring, let's have a look. Well, just as an example, I'll ask him to bring picks, and he will also ask me to produce a good which they will pay 192% more than the normal price. It's usually crossbows or something that you can produce quite easily. So we will need to start sending some items to the brokerage house, to the depot, and then those items can then be traded. So I'll send those items over to the brokerage depot, to the trading depot, and I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so you click on your trade depot, and then if you don't have a broker, you can say anyone requested at the depot, but you will get screwed a bit. And then you click on trade, and here you can see all of the goods that the broker, all of the goods that the other trader has. I do like to, as I said, buy animals. However, they're quite expensive, and I don't have that much to trade at the moment. Typically, I like to trade gems or trade platinum bars because they're worth a lot and you only need a couple of them. But here I think I'll buy some leather. So I'll basically click on everything that I want, and then I will click on the right hand side for everything that I'm willing to trade to the other trader. So here you can see I'm just going to scroll down and pick what else I want. Now on the right hand side you can see, well, you could see that I had some iron bars that I could trade, and basically you need to haggle a bit, and if you offer enough, the trader's text will turn green. If it turns green or even yellow, you can then press trade and the transaction will take place. So that's it for trading. Like I said, it can be a good way to get things that you otherwise would not have right at hand. Now, one zone or office type is what's called the temple. So here you can see I've made a room for a temple. So we'll click on temple, and if you scroll through all of the different types of gods or deities, you can choose which one. I usually pick the one that has the highest number of followers, that makes the highest number of dwarves happy. Here you can see you can choose who the temple is open to, everyone or just people in your own place. Also, how many performers you have playing musical instruments will determine the level of happiness as well. I usually put in a place of offering, so you create that here, a rock altar. You can see here in the stoneworkers workshop. And I typically also produce a statue just to sort of jazz it up a bit, and I will, if I have time and resources, I will also have the floor engraved. All these things help to add the value to the temple. So the temple is a good way to also increase happiness. If you look at the dwarves' thoughts, you'll see that some of them have said, I haven't worshipped in the last days or whatever. So it can be a really good way to increase the happiness, but also increase the number of visitors to your fortress. Farms can be built outside as well as inside. We could do a whole video on farming, but I just want to show you quickly that here I've produced a very sort of basic farm, and here you can choose which sort of crops, just to be mindful that some crops, in fact the majority, you can only grow outside. Only mushrooms you can grow inside. So you'll need those crops for producing food, but also for producing all kinds of drinks. Here you can see the jeweler's shop. So I usually produce the jeweler's shop, maybe not right in the beginning, but fairly early on. It lets you polish stones and it lets you cut gems. Later on you can do things with glass, but that's a bit later on. So I usually start cutting gems quite early on. It can be a very useful way of getting objects for trade. And also you can encrust the gems and encrust the polished stones into weapons, also into furniture. And that has a big impact on lifting the mood of your dwarves. So I really recommend doing that. It's also a great way to get some things that are sort of ridiculous, like a bucket or a rope or who knows what, to be considered an artifact, which is then worth a lot of money. So yeah, it's worth doing that early on. Another thing I advise you to do early on is to create a few tombs. You'll need these for your nobility anyway, but you'll also need them if one or two of your dwarves die early on. So what you do is create, as you can see here, these small rooms. You'll need a coffin, you'll need a door, and then you nominate that particular tomb as either being open to any dead body or being open to just a single dwarf, and that will help to lift the mood of your nobility as well. One thing I'm doing here is digging down to some water. I'm going to show you this in just a minute. You will come across aquifers or underground water. Don't dig all the way to the water, otherwise you'll flood your whole fortress and it will kill all your dwarves. What you can do is produce a floodgate, and you will need a lever, which you see here to the right. You will need to create mechanisms. So you need a mechanism for the floodgate and a mechanism for the lever. Once you have those mechanisms, you can then click on the lever and say link to, and you then link that lever to the floodgate. If you don't link them, then you can't use that floodgate. It's just stuck like that. So what I want to do is basically flood this area that I'm digging out here because it's sand. And once I get some water there, it will become mud. And mud has a slightly better fertility than sand does for growing mushrooms and so on. I just want to show you an example of how you can flood a area of your fortress. Alright, so fast forwarding, we've created the lever and the floodgate, and we've created the mechanisms and linked them up. Now you can see I've dug through and the water will just flow straight on in, and unless you have a dwarf standing right there, there's no one to pull the lever. Oh, I haven't done it properly, I've messed it up. So if you continue like this, it will flood your entire fortress. So here you can see I've really messed it up. It's going to flood everywhere, it's going to kill the dwarves. Water has 7 levels, 1 to 7. So 1 is the lowest. If it's 1 or 2, the dwarves can still walk around and pull the lever. If it's much higher than that, they get drowned basically. So here you can see I've really messed it up, and I'll do it again. Okay, so this time I've linked everything up properly and I've opened the floodgate, and you can see I've got people there to pull the lever once I'm satisfied enough water has come in. So top right here, I can switch to the lever and pull it, and I'll wait a few seconds. and I've now closed the floodgate, and the water is still there, so it will continue to sort of flow in there. Hopefully it'll get into the area I want to do farming in over the sand, and that will then leave mud once it dries up. So that can be a way to somewhat improve the fertility of this piece of land for farming. Okay, as you can see, the water's flowed in, and eventually it won't go any further, and you can see down towards the floodgate it's already started to dry up and leave mud behind. So that's all I wanted to show you on the topic of water and flooding and floodgates. So a little bit later I reopened the floodgate and let a bit water in, not too much because I don't want to start a disaster, but just let a little bit more water in, and now I've planted dimple caps, and in the other one plump helmets. So I'll use them for producing food, but mainly for producing drinks. Alright, so here you can see, can start doing some farming underground. Those are two very useful crops, can be grown underground. The other one is, of course, pigtails for cotton, which you can produce clothes then from. So all things to be grown underground. Alright everyone, that's everything I wanted to show you. I think this is a introduction to a very deep and complex game. There's hundreds of other things we could talk about and look into, but those are topics for dedicated videos. I just wanted to show you how to really get your feet off the ground and start your fortress in the early days. So I hope this video helped. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.